Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast Strikes Back. You're listening to our review of Ad Astra. I don't know why I look to you for permission. My name's Connor. This is my friend Ben.
Hello.
We are still Georgeless, which means I'm coming to terms with doing the intro, which, when you've heard it a million times, you'd think it'd be really easy to do it word for word. But as soon as you're one word off, it all just goes to shit. You're just done. You're like, oh no.
Once the rhythm's gone.
Yeah. Anyways, so yes, this is our review for Ad Astra, the 2019 Brad Pitt, James Gray space film.
I believe it's French for Fly Me to the Moon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyways, when we do these reviews, what we like to do is kind of give an idea of how we were coming into this film, what we thought of the trailers, what we kind of think of the people that are involved. So Ben, why don't you take us away with that?
No problem. And for the beginning, we will be talking no spoilers for the film, so you're in a safe space. Come back a little later for the full spoiler delve. So this movie was kind of mysterious. Kind of came out of nowhere, and then it was sort of just here.
There was like 2 ads that I remember seeing?
Trailers that I didn't pay too much attention to, but thought looked really good.
Yeah.
And then reviews started flooding in earlier this week, saying that apparently we've got the real deal on our hands. So sitting down in the cinema, I was pretty excited to watch a new big kind of epic scoped Brad Pitt starring sci-fi film that I knew nothing about, essentially.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Yeah, very similar. I mean, we got a trailer for this. It feels like only a few months ago. Like, it doesn't feel like a very long time. I think we might have gotten a second trailer. The trailers really didn't give anything away. Very kind of, I guess, vague story premise, not even storyline, just like this kind of like general premise of what this is going to be. I've stayed away from the reviews. I've stayed away, apart from watching the trailers, I've stayed away from any kind of media that would give me an insight as to what this movie is or how it will play out, plot or otherwise. So, yeah, I went into it quite excited because it isn't very often that I feel that hyped up for a movie that I haven't engaged with, quite aggressively through marketing or something like that.
Covering it every week.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the closest we've gotten to that festival viewing where you go in completely
Exactly.
blind with like a big release film in quite a long time.
Yeah. No. I 100% agree. I can't remember the last movie that I went into that I was completely blind on, that I was just like, that's this big, that I was kind of, that I had that experience with.
And are you familiar with any of James Gray's previous work?
I have heard of just about all his works because I looked him up and I was like, I've heard of all these. I've never bothered to watch any of them.
I watched The Lost City of Z.
That's the one with Charlie
Hunnam, and Rob Pattinson. I watched that last year. That had gotten a lot of good word. That was on my list of things to check out. And that was a really interesting movie that I can find a lot of comparisons with to this one as well. But that's all I've seen of his, so I really have no basis otherwise. Yeah, no.
The most, I guess, known person on this for me, apart from the actors, in terms of who was on the crew, was the cinematographer. Hoyt van
Hoytema, who did, of course, Interstellar.
Which makes sense. It's a very, I guess, sort of similar film. But yeah, I didn't really have a gauge of where this is. I quite like Brad Pitt's choice of films because he's kind of at that point where he can choose whatever project he wants, right? And it's almost a stamp of approval because if he's interested in it, he's not doing it, for the money. Or I'm assuming he's not doing it for the money because he's got tons of that. He's probably picking these projects because they're good projects.
And it also helps that he has a wide breadth of roles he can play because he's 55 and he looks 40, the bastard.
Yeah, no, he's looking real good for 55. So why don't we get into what we thought of the film, or I guess into the actual review, non-spoiler part. is there anything that you wanted to bring up first, or anything that struck you as?
Well, we just mentioned Hoyt van Hoytma.
Yep.
I mean, we've got to put right up front, I think, how great this movie looks.
As a masterclass in visuals and sound, this movie is really up there.
Yeah, with space movies have a high bar for looking amazing and really selling to you that you're watching something that it wasn't filmed in space, but convinces you that it looks like it was. With Gravity and First Man just recently, and of course Interstellar, and this reaches that bar absolutely.
Yeah, I mean you get a sense that the settings that they go to, at least, are relatively well thought out in terms of the kind of feel of them. The way that this is shot is really beautiful. I mean, not just from a technical perspective of being out in space, but just shot in general. I mean, this movie and the way that it uses lighting in particular is really spectacular. I thought that it was very inventive. It's been a while since I've seen a film use lighting so effectively. In fact, the last time I can remember kind of having that stand out was 2049. The way that they kind of used shadow and light and all that.
Yeah, my mind did drift to that movie a few times watching this. And you mentioned the lighting. It does it in such a way that feels very real. Like I was saying about looking like it was actually filmed in space. Like there's elements where they'll be somewhere where there's no sunlight and it's just pitch black.
Yeah.
And it really sells it. And that really kind of feeds through the whole film, I thought, which is so much more science fiction-y than I had anticipated before watching the first trailer, which I remember we all had the kind of reaction was like, oh, this looks a lot more out there than I would have thought with a Brad Pitt space thing. I thought it was going to be more like a modern day. He's just a guy in space. You're Apollo, whatever's, or Gravity or such. But the whole movie, it is set. It says near future. That's all the kind of gauge we get.
Yeah.
It feels pretty far removed though. Like we've done some a lot more exploring of the galaxy than we have in real life. But it all feels so well thought out.
It does. I mean, I don't want to. This movie does a couple of things. One of which is that it manages to make things feel well worn, but it's also quite stylized. And it kind of walks that line a little bit between things that were obviously done for a stylistic effect and things that are done to make it feel real. And I don't think that it always nails that kind of style versus reality thing. If when I watched Interstellar, there was never a moment where I was like, this couldn't happen. This seems out of the breadth of science and reality.
I even love being the fifth dimension.
I choose to forget that part. I choose to forget that part. I mean, I think the movie works without that speech. If you just took that speech out,
we're not talking about it. I won't bring it up again.
Anyways,
because I think maybe a more apt comparison would be The Martian, which was had such a huge emphasis on scientific accuracy. And I think this movie kind of aims for that as well. I don't think it's near that echelon at all.
No, it's not. Because there's some things that I just kind of looked at it was like, that doesn't feel like it's been. It didn't feel like it had someone on set that was an astronaut or a scientist being like, that's not how that would happen.
Very curious to talk in spoilers about what you're talking about there. Yeah,
and it's a weird gripe to have with this kind of movie because it's small things that wouldn't normally bother me. I mean, the comparison I always think about is when I first watched Iron Man, it took me, I had to kind of check myself because I was like, oh, if he was actually landing that hard on the ground, he would just be jelly in that suit.
Yeah.
And it kind of dawns on me, oh, well, that's not really the point of this film. You can just forgive those little, quote unquote inaccuracies. But with a movie like this, one that is aiming to feel very lived in, as well as a kind of like a space movie where it's, I don't know, I feel like there's more attention to that just as an audience member. Those smaller things kind of they stood out to me more.
I guess less even the scientific accuracy of it. It was more the almost like social accuracy. Like this
That
feels
too.
like a world that actually evolved from ours in a lot of ways. There was this great little detail that I thought was really just really perfect when they're on a moon base, and we get the exterior shot of it, and it looks exactly as you'd expect a moon base to look in whatever year this is,
I know what
except
you're
there's a
saying.
giant neon cowboy
Yeah.
outside, like Vegas, because the place is like a big chintzy tourist trap now. And I thought that was just a fun little addition to it.
It was, yeah. And it's really cleverly shot, right? Because it doesn't really grab your attention right away.
Which is impressive for a big neon cowboy.
Yeah, but you kind of think like, I mean, the whole thing is impressive. It's a big, like, base on the moon, and you're kind of looking at it, and then you gotta go, wait, is that a cowboy? And doing the thing, and it makes you think about, it makes you kind of think about something more than just, oh, it's a base on the moon. Like I found myself a couple of times during this film thinking about what little details meant for the overall world. So I think the movie did that really effectively by just, kind of placing a couple of key little things around the place, and just saying, this is how the world has changed a bit. This is how it hasn't changed.
Yeah, I think they really successfully built a world, if only there was a term for that. I thought the various kind of action elements of it were really well put together, like actually quite thrilling. And I know it sounds lame to say, but just the opening, for instance, and I won't go into detail about it, but it's just a scene of Brad Pitt's kind of day at work that kind of goes wrong, and I thought it was staggering. Like,
I mean, it gets into the, again, I say quote unquote action. It gets into the action pretty quick. And it's really interesting because this movie is not what I would describe as, an action-packed movie or a, it's actually quite the opposite. The pacing of this film feels very
languid,
or purposeful and not rushed.
No.
But it is kind of broken up by these moments of
pieces,
intense thrill is probably, it's probably a good word for it.
I don't want to oversell it because the one that I just name checked at the beginning, I think, is the most impressive kind of more adrenaline moment in the film.
Yeah, probably. There's about one or two that I would kind of hold up there. I'm trying to think if this is spoilers. There was a
if you have to think it is.
Yeah, that's probably not a bad idea. Well, why don't we go into something a little bit less specific? Why don't we jump all the way over to the cast?
Yep. Okay. So this is the Brad Pitt show. He is 90% of all of the dialogue and what you're looking at on screen. And
his performance makes or breaks this.
Totally. And he does a terrific job. He's so reliable as an actor. I gotta say, he was so joyless. I would say bordering on bland, especially following up from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which you haven't seen yet.
I still haven't seen that.
So that I would call one of the absolute performances of his career, possibly the. So watching him in this play a very straight-laced, exactly what you'd kind of expect from an astronaut, all American, just kind of like, I'm a man kind of guy. He was engaging, but I don't know. He was so he played it so close to home, or close to the chest.
See, I found that really interesting because he was very unemotional for big swaths of the film. However, I found that meant that. Sorry. I found that meant that when he did show emotion, even if it was just a little bit, it felt like screaming. And I thought that was really effective.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of the, mastery in terms of things like acting is as much about knowing when to do something as when not to do something. Like when can you pull it back? Because we've all seen bad actors kind of overact, and you're like, no, this scene actually needed less.
Yeah, bad acting is rarely underacting.
Yeah, exactly, right. And or it's like severely underacting, like just not responding to a scene at all. So I thought that this was really cleverly played, and I thought that he showed the right number of kind of cracks in the very level facade that, as I said, they felt like screams almost. Like it amplified the subtleties.
I do completely agree. It's just something, I guess it speaks more to the movie as a whole, I think, that we can get into in a bit.
Yeah.
Liv Tyler, the big comeback special for Liv Tyler.
Yeah.
I think she almost had a line in this film.
I heard her speak. That is a thing that happened.
I was thinking just before we started here, I'm like, did she speak? She did momentarily.
She's had a rough track record of sending men off into space.
Yeah. So if you're a big Liv Tyler fan, maybe skip this one. It's not for you. So many of the actors, the familiar faces in the movie, are essentially cameos. Like they're around for a scene or two. This movie is really, it really is a journey that he's going on. I think a really probably obvious comparison is Apocalypse Now or Heart of Darkness.
Okay, yeah.
Because I mean, if you've all seen the trailer, I assume, or not. He's essentially journeying into the unknown to find his father, who may or may not have gone crazy, which is essentially the Colonel Kurtz story from Apocalypse Now. So anyway, that brings us to Tommy Lee Jones, of course.
Yeah. Again, 90% of this is Brad Pitt, but the scenes that Tommy Lee Jones is in, I thought were really well done.
He's
always
an
a reliable
master.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking just recently. I don't know. I was on the track of like what makes a good actor. Is it someone who is capable of great acting? Is it someone who always delivers?
The consistency versus
because you got your Nick Cage who turns in terrible performances all the time, but when he's great, he's amazing. But maybe being a professional is part of being a great actor. And I got on to thinking, like, who's someone who's just always great? Like, the most reliable actor. I'm like, it's Tommy Lee Jones. He's the most reliable actor. And then I was like, oh, Batman Forever. But,
yeah. But I mean, you got people like Brad Pitt, people like Leonardo DiCaprio. They're kind of on that upper echelon, but they always deliver. And there is a case to be made that, like, success breeds success, or that it's kind of this perpetual cycle that once you can choose your gigs, essentially, that, if you have the right, because he produces as well, so he would have had a say in, Brad Pitt produces as well, so he would have had a say in, the people, the crew that's involved, when the script comes out, he's going to be able to, like, peruse that and understand that, like, there's an argument to be made that because they are up at that echelon, they're picking the right things, and that's why they're turning all these good performances. But I would tend to agree that consistency has to be part of it. It's one of the, like, I enjoy watching, like, Michael B. Jordan is someone that I've never not enjoyed in a role. Maybe I just haven't found the right.
Fantastic Four?
No, because I haven't.
Remember, he delivered a fine performance.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. Thank you for not shattering my my thoughts on Michael B. Jordan. I don't know why he popped into my head, but there's like a set of actors that it doesn't matter how bad the movie is, even they are never what lets that movie down.
Totally.
So,
I was really surprised to learn just then that Tommy Lee Jones is only 18 years older than Brad Pitt.
That can't be true.
He looks 50 years older than Brad Pitt. Of course, Brad Pitt looks very young for his age, but I mean, do
you know who is looking their age? Donald Sutherland.
Oh my God, what is his age? He's quite old.
He's 84.
84, yeah.
He is basically just like loose skin over like he is not looking good.
I mean,
he was. I mean, like, it might have been the character he was playing.
I reckon Tommy Lee Jones looks older, and he's 11 years younger.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I actually met James Cromwell the other day.
Did you really?
From Babe, That'll Do Pig.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a very tall man.
I believe that, yeah.
But you know what? Shorter than I expected. He's about my height, and I'm like 6'4".
You're a very tall man, though, as well.
People always say, I thought they'd be taller about movie stars. And even this guy who was my height, I was like, I kind of thought he'd be taller.
I almost feel like in the odd situation that I would have ever met, not Brad Pitt,
Cruz?
Cruz. I feel like I would be surprised by how tall he is, because all anyone says is how short he actually is.
Of course, yeah.
So I'm just like, by now in my head, he's basically at my like elbow height. And if he's any taller than that, I'm gonna be like, huh, well done.
He could be like a little taller than you, couldn't he?
I mean, it's not that difficult. I'm not a very
No, I know, but the way people talk about him, like he's movie short. Anyway, it's like Robert Downey Jr. is like 5'9" or something.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's a little man too. Anyway, we've never been this off track before.
Talking about actors' heights.
Ad Astra. I mean, this is where I'm going to get in some negatives, because we are so off track. I got a little off track during this movie. This is a very serious film.
Yeah.
This is a movie where Brad Pitt is super serious the entire time, and it's all his voiceover being super serious and vague about the mysteries of...
So that's what I was going to ask, which I wasn't sure if that was necessarily a spoiler, which was, what did you think of that, the narration technique?
Yeah, so it's a controversial one, because usually narration is kind of brought up in a negative way. I think it's when you're talking about the theatrical cut of Blade Runner and how dumb that was, or the exact same with Dark City. It's often...
It feels like a lazy man's way of telling the audience what's happening, as opposed
telling
to
instead of showing. And I gotta say, at least half the narration in this film, I was sitting there like, you could remove this and just have what we're looking at on screen completely unchanged, and I think you would get it. And I would honestly like to see a version of this film that removes the narration entirely. And there are bits of narration, Brad Pitt just kind of ruminating, and footage from earlier in his life will pop up, or a photo of something. And I think that would be really interesting to do exactly that without him talking over it.
I mean, they already took quite a few liberties with that, which is why I'm kind of okay with the narration, because once it started... To me, it felt like a stylistic choice as opposed to a, let's tell the audience what's going on choice.
Yeah. It wasn't exposition. It was kind of emotional exposition.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it was done in a way that I didn't feel as though the filmmakers were treating me like an idiot, which I sometimes feel like they are when it comes to narration. It's like, this is what's going on, and you're like, cool. I could have probably figured that out.
Although your favorite line was in the movie, someone was explaining some kind of plot details, and as he was explaining it, he said, "As you know."
Yeah.
But it was well enough done.
I missed that though. I'm kind of disappointed. Do you remember?
Yeah, right at the beginning when they were setting up, they were asking him about the project that his father was involved in. And he was like, "All right, I'll explain it, even though we all know it."
Yeah.
And he's like, "And who was that man?" He's like, "It was my father."
Yeah. Which is in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler. But yeah. I don't know. This I just didn't. I must have missed it. I completely blanked on it. I did like. I mean, back to what we were talking about. I did like Donald Sutherland in this.
Yeah, he was fine. He's consistent as well. This movie is so well made in so many ways.
Yeah.
But a lot of it feels so well trodden, so done before. It feels like $100 million way to repeat the fact that fathers and sons have complicated relationships. And I don't think it really gets any more profound than that. I think it's really well presented.
Yeah.
And I think it is saying... What it is saying is very valid and beautifully stated, and done before.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny though. Like it's a movie that made me feel as though I was dumb for not getting how profound it was, because it was presented in a way which is like, I am profound, right? and then me going like, well, I got the main thread of what you were saying, but you didn't really do that much with it. Like, this movie is, at its very core, quite a simple story. Doesn't make an awful lot of sense, but it is simple. I don't know if that...
No, that's right. I mean, this is a movie where Brad Pitt literally says, you know, sons will always pay for the sins of the father. And I'm like, wow, that's an original sentiment movie. And I like it, because how well put together it is. I think you kind of expect a little more by the time it all wraps up. And I did like it, because there's maybe the third quarter or so where I'm like, really feeling like a nap. But I do like kind of how it all wraps up at the end. But yeah, overall, I think this is just a really pretty package with a well-told story and a good message that we've seen before so many times.
Yeah, I would agree with that. One other negative that I will point out, and it's very close to what you've just said, which is that this movie doesn't feel like there are any real consequences or any real, like, decisions don't really have weight to them. Because there's things that happen in this film that there is no, I guess, repercussions for.
Yeah.
That kind of make you think nothing anyone does is really that.
Yeah, and nor do they even address why there aren't repercussions.
Exactly. And you're kind of like, okay, that doesn't make an awful lot of sense. So this movie feels very much like, if you just are following the performance of Brad Pitt throughout this thing, masterful. If you're looking to understand this world, if you're looking for a broader or deeper message than what you kind of get right off the bat, you're going to be a bit disappointed.
Yeah, I think that is probably true. At the same time, I had an experience with The Lost City of Z, where that was a movie that got a lot of buzz. I'd heard a lot of good things about, and I watched it, and I'm like, man, that was long, and kind of repetitive and a little boring, and really great in a lot of ways as well, and ended on a beautifully haunting note. And I think as the months go on, and the tedium of the film slips from my mind, I'm left with the stuff that really worked. And I'm like, man, there was some really interesting stuff in that movie. And I think this might be one of those movies that, unlike 90% of the other films we watch, will grow on me over time. Whereas,
I agree.
Whereas so many of these other bloody things, I come out of lukewarm, and then a month later I'm like, that was shit. Whereas this one, I think there is enough good stuff in, and it is trying to say a lot of stuff that I think I'll be able to think back on it and be like, yeah, that was worth it for what it did right.
Yeah, because it doesn't do anything terribly bad. I think
totally.
that's its first kind of step in the right direction. Like the criticisms that I would have of this film are that it doesn't go far enough, not that it does something wrong.
Yeah, like this movie evokes 2001: A Space Odyssey in a lot of ways. But whereas that movie, I think, swings for whatever is 1,000 miles past the fences.
Yeah.
This one's kind of aiming at the fences. And for some people, this movie would succeed more than that one. But I will always take that crazy, really evocative, really reaching for the stars, literally, over this maybe.
Yeah. I think with 2001: Space Odyssey, this one feels closer to reality, and therefore I feel is a little less kind of up its own ass, if I can coin a phrase.
I would say this movie is pretty up its own ass.
It is. I'm just saying less.
You know what movie this is strikingly similar to, and this might tickle you, is a film from earlier this year, High Life, starring Robert Pattinson.
I missed that one.
Yes, yeah, and you will never watch it because you hated the trailer so much.
No. I know exactly what you're talking about, though. It's the one with the baby in the prison
In space.
in space. Yeah. No, fuck that movie.
Yeah, and honestly, coming out of this movie, I was like, this movie would probably feel more at home if it was in French, because that was essentially a French film. It was all in English, but it was directed by a French woman. And this movie really felt in its dialogue and how blunt it was in being philosophical and saying what it was about. I'm like, this really feels like a French film in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Especially like that narration style and
Yeah.
Anything else that kind of strikes you about this film?
No, I'm ready to get into final recommendations and
so
spoil the shit out of it.
For me, as a kind of final recommend, I would definitely see this in the theater, because something that we didn't focus too much on, but we mentioned very briefly, which was that the mix of the visual and audio is really spectacular.
It's very cinematic.
We didn't touch very much on the music, which is Max Richter. And I thought that the score of this movie was subtle but really well done. It was kind of haunting. And so, yeah, I think it's a movie that is worth seeing on the big screen with a good sound system. Or if you're going to watch it at home, watch it with good sound. Because this movie feels more like an experience rather than, a story. But yeah, I would say see it at the film or at the theater. And in general, I mean, don't go into it expecting an action film. Some of the marketing might have lent itself towards that, and it always does. But yeah, I don't know. I would recommend this film. I think I would say that you should probably check it out.
Yeah, this is tough. Like, I can't wholeheartedly recommend this film if there's a bunch of other films that I could otherwise recommend you, but that's not what we're talking about. If it's just the binary, see this or don't see it, it's so hard. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
If you're going to see it, if you've already decided, definitely see it cinematically. That's the only way.
The way I was thinking about it, because someone asked me whether I had just seen Ad Astra as I walked out, and I said yes, and they're like, "Is it any good?" It kind of made me think about this movie and whether or not I would, when I say recommend someone to see it, it's very much like, will you have been better off at the end of it? And I think people will. I think that once you come out, this movie has made me want to think about this movie. I feel like I'm searching for something. Like it's very beautiful film to watch in the moment, but it's also got enough there that you can kind of think about it afterwards. And, good or bad, I think that that's worth seeing.
Yeah, it entirely depends on what kind of moviegoer you are. If you watch that trailer and you thought this looks like a cool kind of sci-fi actioner, stay away, because I think you'll be bored out of your brain. If you're someone who really liked all or a lot of Interstellar, you'll probably get something out of this.
Yep.
If you saw the trailer for High Life and thought, I'm kind of interested, though that looks really wanky, this is probably a better alternative.
So me.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, people did the same to me. I came out and they said, "Was it good?" I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. Ignore the reviews and the Rotten Tomatoes score, because I think they'll pump this up a little too high for you. But it's definitely, I mean, it's a film. Like,
I feel like we're not giving this movie its due. Like, it's still a really, really excellently shot film. The performances are really strong. I think that the hesitation in this is just kind of around the non-consequential nature of the plot, which kind of makes you feel a little non-committal, maybe. But I don't like. I think that
I think I got to the end and I desperately wanted to go to sleep. Like, I really think it's quite boring in a lot of parts.
See, I was never bored.
A lot of duration. And this is, I watched a 3 p.m. session. I didn't come from a long day at work.
Which is ironic, because I watched this movie terribly hungover and later in the day, which means I should have been napping, but no, I didn't ever find myself bored in this film.
Yeah, I guess I'm just gonna have to sit on the fence here. I can't really recommend this movie yet. Maybe I'll revisit it later this year, and
I'll be really interested to see how you feel like in a month or two, because that's what happened with Godzilla. I remember watching that, and like that movie just stuck in my brain for like months after I watched it.
Very different.
Very different film, yeah.